She spoke in a voice that wasn't hers, and then the lights went out. At Paranormal M, we caught it on tape. Subscribe to see the truth. The Scary Dolls by the River. It might sound like I made this up, but I swear to God it happened. In 2015, I had gone home to visit my mom in Arkansas. She lives out by these shallow creeks that cut through the woods, the kind where you still see kids catching crawdads with buckets if you go in the summer. It was late September, still warm, but the air had that first bite of fall. You know, when the bugs start to quiet down at night. I'd gone out walking with my cousin after supper, just to get some air. He's the type who always wants to show me his hot spot. So he led me to this bend in the creek where he used to fish when we were kids. I hadn't been there in, 15 years maybe. We sat on a big rock and were just skipping stones, just talking about nothing. Then he nudged me and said, "Do you see that?" Across the creek, through this light fog that had started rolling in, which was weird because it wasn't even that cool out. We saw, and I don't even know what it was without sounding crazy, or at least how to describe it. It looked like two kids, and at first I thought it was the neighbor's kids messing around with an old raft. They were waving at us real slow, like when you spot a friend from far away. But as they got closer, I realized it wasn't right, and they weren't kids. They were dolls. Big dolls, like the old-fashioned ones your grandma might have had. The ones with the painted faces. One was dressed in this sailor outfit all faded, and the other in a red dress with one eye missing. The red eye socket still gives me the creeps thinking about that. And they were sitting or maybe standing on this flat board drifting straight toward us. Here's the part that really messed me up. The creek was flowing the other way. I could see the leaves and sticks floating downstream. But these things were just coming against it, steady as anything. My cousin said something along the lines of, "That's not right." And for once, he wasn't joking. We just stood there frozen, watching them wave until it got too close. We both bolted back up the path. I swear I didn't even breathe until we were back at the house. Later, when we calmed down, we tried to reason it out. Maybe somebody set the dolls adrift for some weird ritual, or maybe it was a prank. But dolls don't wave, and they don't move upstream. We never told Mom. She's the church-going type. She would have said it was the devil trying to get at us or something. I don't know what it was. All I know is I haven't sat by that creek since. Don't think I ever will. The old gym voices. So this one summer I was working at a community center. Maybe 2012, I think. I had just finished a night shift at the gas station. The director asked me to help sort it through this bunch of old sports gear that they'd been storing in this gym. The place was basically empty. There were no kids and no classes. Just me in that echoey space with the lights half off. The gym always felt strange when it was empty. I grew up playing ball there, so I knew every corner of the place. But alone, it felt hollow, like too much air. And anyway, I was dragging bins of jerseys across the floor when I heard what I thought was people talking in the bleachers. Just low voices like a guy and a woman. I couldn't catch words exactly. I figured maybe the janitor came in with his wife or something. But when I looked up, there was no one, and the bleachers were bare. And the voices didn't stop, though. They just kept going steady. Almost like a conversation that didn't care if I was there. I walked over, dragging my sneakers loud on purpose, thinking maybe somebody was messing with me. But it didn't get louder or quieter. It was like the sound was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I even checked the locker room door because sometimes the echo in that building is nuts. But nothing, it was empty. And then, I don't know, I got this heavy feeling in my chest. The same kind of thing I'd felt years before in that same gym. It was during a basketball practice. Back then, I'd seen this little figure dart across the far end of the court. It looked like a kid, like fast as hell. But when I ran over there was no one. I remember my buddy asking me if I'd quote-unquote seen the shadow kid. He laughed it off, but I didn't forget it. So anyway, standing there in 2012, listening to those voices, I just felt the same exact thing. Like I shouldn't be there. Like I'd walked into a room that already belonged to someone else. Grabbed my bag and bailed. Later in the day, I asked the janitor if he'd been in the gym, and he just shook his head and told me, that place, it talks sometimes. It was real casual, like it was no big deal. Well, I don't know. Could be pipes, could be my brain just being fried from night shifts. But the thing is I still won't go into that gym alone. Not even now. The thing at my uncle's farmhouse. Years back at my uncle's old farmhouse out in rural Kentucky, it's one of those places that looks fine in the daylight. There's fields, there's a sagging barn, there's a porch swing. But at night, man, it feels wrong. Too quiet, like the woods are listening. My aunt swore the place was haunted, like she'd say she'd hear somebody stomping around the gravel driveway at midnight. Then this heavy thud, like something dropping into the old cattle pond. The dogs would go absolutely nuts, barking and growling. But when she'd shine a flashlight, there'd be nothing, just water ripples spreading out. I didn't believe her, thought it was raccoons or coyotes. My cousin Eddie, who's the most skeptical guy I know, he laughs at ghost stories, said, I'll prove it's nothing. I'll sleep over there tonight. So he brings his sleeping bag, some beer, and sets up in the living room. Around 2 a.m, he told me later he starts hearing it. First, the crunch of gravel, then some splashing sounds. Almost like somebody doing cannonballs into the pond. He checks, and there's no one there, and it keeps happening. Dogs barking their heads off, tails between their legs. Then comes this pounding at the front door, pretty hard, like somebody trying to kick it in. Eddie panics. Instead of checking, he bolts through the kitchen, out the back door and runs half a mile down the road barefoot. Left his beer, his bag, and everything. Wouldn't step foot in that house again. Still swears it wasn't just animals. He said the pounding was too deliberate, like fists. And the pond splashes. He says it was deep and heavy like a grown man dropping in. Not some little critter. Well, the farmhouse is empty now. No one seems to stay there. Every time I drive past, I roll up my window, even in the summer. Don't know why, just feels safer that way. The summer I saw Uncle Joe. Never actually written anything like this before, but I figured if there's a place to tell it, it's here. This happened when I was maybe 7 or 8, around that age. We lived in this old farmhouse in Ohio, right by the cornfields. My parents both work late shifts sometimes. So just me and my older brother hanging around, usually, watching cartoons or bickering over the remote or something. Anyway, one night I'm sitting on the floor doodling in a notebook when I noticed somebody sitting in Dad's old recliner. It was Uncle Joe, and I hadn't seen him in years, like since I was a baby. It took me a second to place him. It looked the same as in the photos on the hallway wall, flannel shirt, big mustache, the whole deal. So I asked him, "When did you get here?" He said all casual, "Just a little while ago." Now here's the thing. Uncle Joe had passed away when I was about 2. He was in a car accident. Everyone in my family knew that. Even me, though I didn't really, get it at the time. I was too young. So right away, something felt off, and he wasn't scary, well, at least not at first, so he said, "I've been watching over you. You want to come with me? It's better where I am." I remember I laughed nervously, and I said, "I can't, I got school tomorrow." Like, that was my excuse. He grinned, kind of sad, and said, "Well, you can go to school over there, too." And that part stuck with me because it was so weird. School in the afterlife. He reached his hand out like he wanted me to follow him, and I swear my whole chest tightened up. Told him I needed to ask my mom, and when I stood up, he grabbed my wrist real tight and said, "Don't tell her I'm here, she won't understand." I wriggled free somehow, and when I looked back, he was sitting there staring at me like disappointed. Then he stood and said, "Guess I'll go then." He walked straight out the front door. Not 2 minutes later, the phone rang. My mom answered, and it was Aunt Lisa. She was crying, telling Mom she'd been thinking about Joe that night, how she missed him, which was just weird timing. After that, I saw him one more time about a year later, same chair, same flannel, and he asked again if I wanted to come with him, and this time I told him, "No, Mom would be sad." He looked real thoughtful at that and then said, "Yeah, I suppose she would." And he just sort of faded. Haven't seen him since. Thing that gets me, though, is my brother swears he heard somebody answer me that night. He was upstairs and thought I was talking to Dad, and he heard a man's voice say, "Yeah, clear as day." I don't know what to make of it. Maybe I was dreaming, maybe I wasn't. But every time I walk past that chair now, I kind of half expect to see Uncle Joe sitting there again. The old Polaroid that wasn't right. Back in the late 90s, I worked at this little 1-hour photo place inside a strip mall in Nebraska. It had all these chemical smells. Never left your clothes, even after you'd get home and wait a while. We mostly developed vacation pictures and school portraits and other boring stuff. So one afternoon, this older lady dropped off a roll of film for us. She was frail and kind of hunched, kind of person who looks like they might blow away if the wind picks up. She said that her last roll of film, well, rather it was her last roll of film because her lungs weren't good, as she put it, and she coughed the whole time she was at the counter. So I run her negatives through, and there's no problem. But when I start developing one set, I swear my stomach turned over. There's a photo of her sitting in a recliner, taken by somebody else, must have been family, I'm guessing. Nothing weird at first, except the wall behind her head looked like it was crawling. I leaned in closer and realized it wasn't the wall, it was dozens, maybe hundreds of tiny faces all pressed together with their mouths open. Their eyes were squinting like they were screaming but muted. The whole section of wallpaper behind her was just faces. I actually dropped the print in the bin and cursed out loud, and my coworker thought I'd splashed chemicals on myself. Well, I ran it again thinking maybe it was a light leak or some weird processing issue. But no, the second time that one shot came out crystal clear. Same chair, same lady, just normal floral wallpaper. No faces. I didn't tell the woman when she came back, just handed her the envelope like everything was fine. She smiled, kind of real tired, and said she was moving into hospice soon. I never saw her again, and for weeks after I kept thinking about that photo. I even dreamed about it once, those tiny faces chanting, all in the same voice like a choir. I can still hear the faint hum when I think about it too hard. Tossed the first print in the shredder the same day, and still wish I hadn't. Like maybe somebody else could have explained it. Or maybe it's better gone. I honestly don't know. The faucet at the trailer park. This happened a while back. I was living in this rundown trailer park outside of Tulsa. My uncle had just moved in with us after his girlfriend died, and I swear the whole place got heavier after that. Like before him, it was just a creaky old trailer. But once he was there, weird stuff kind of followed. He used to complain about his headphones tugging at night, like somebody giving them a little yank. He'd laugh it off, but I noticed he always kept the lights on when he slept in the back room. Anyway, I didn't think much of it until things started happening in the kitchen and bathroom. First time, I'm walking to the bathroom and the cold faucet is blasting. It's like somebody turned it on full strength. No one was home except me, and I just muttered, "Damn pipes," and I shut it off. A couple days later, same thing, only this time I yelled for everybody. My uncle, my girlfriend, and even my dad came stomping down the hallway, and I pointed the sink, and I'm like, "Look." And everyone just stares at me. My dad smirked and said I probably forgot I turned it on, which I didn't. Then came the day when the water just stopped. I tried the knob and there was nothing. The toilet was still filling fine though, and I hollered like a madman until everybody showed up again. They rolled their eyes until my dad tried to get under the sink to mess with the shut-off valve. Well, the whole cabinet under there was jammed full of junk, like old soap bottles, some dollar store bubble bath, and random crap from God knows when. There's no way anybody had reached in to shut it off. My dad had to yank out all these bottles, and half of them glued to the bottom from old leaks. When he finally got to the valve, he twisted it, and boom, water came rushing back. I'll never forget the look in his face in the mirror. It was pale. Not mad, not smug, just pale. My mom didn't say a word, just walked back to her room like nothing had happened. Me, well, I'm practically jumping up and down like an idiot. "See, I told you." My girlfriend rubbed my back like she was calming down a dog, which probably kept me from screaming more. Nobody's ever brought it up again, not even once. My uncle still doesn't talk about it either, though I caught him once staring at that bathroom door like it had teeth. I don't know. Maybe it was the trailer, or maybe it was him, or maybe it was both. All I know is every now and then when I stay up late, it's real quiet, and I swear I hear the faucet click, like it wants to turn itself on again. The woman on the back road. I don't normally share stuff like this. I know how it's going to sound, but just to get it out of my head, I'm going to throw it over here. Summer of 2019, around 10:30 at night. Driving home from a late shift at the diner. There's this back road that cuts between two cornfields in rural Indiana, and it saves me about 10 minutes, so I take it even though it's dark and honestly kind of creepy. No street lights, just gravel crunching under your tires and the occasional mailbox that looks like a person in the corner of your eye. About somewhere halfway down the stretch is when I see somebody walking along the ditch. At first, I thought maybe it was a farm kid or somebody broke down, which really wouldn't be that weird out here. But when my headlights hit her, it didn't make sense. She looked wrapped up in something white, like a sheet or a quilt, dragging around her shoulders. I could see the shape of her head and her arms and the whole body, but no face. It's like the cloth covered everything. Not even shadows where her nose or her mouth should be, just flat. And the part that makes me sweat is my old Chevy's heater had been blasting because the night was cool, but the second I got close, the air in the cab went freezing. My breath fogged up and actually fiddled with the dial, thinking my heater quit. Which it hadn't, so. She never stepped aside, just walked steady and slow like she knew I was coming. I tried to tell myself it was just some girl messing around or maybe a runaway or something. But my gut knew it wasn't that. I swear when I passed, she turned her head toward me with that no-face thing, just that white cloth shifting. I panicked when I realized the road dead ends at the old silo. Basically a cul-de-sac for tractors. My stomach dropped and I swung the wheel hard to turn around fast, dust flying everywhere. Took 5 seconds. Around there, tops. She was gone completely. No way she could have ducked into the fields that quick, especially wrapped up like that. The corn's high, but you'd still hear movement, but there was nothing. Just the sound of my engine. I ended up driving all the way to town, but I eventually calmed down and parked by this gas station where there were people and lights. I sat there drinking a Coke from the vending machine, hand shaking like I'd had 5 cups of coffee. Never saw her again, but I think about her every time I take that shortcut, which is less and less these days. Anybody else seen something like that in a farm? Or maybe I'm just losing it. When the screen bit back. I've always liked weird stuff and old ghost stories and haunted podcasts and random creepy YouTube rabbit holes. It's my comfort noise when I'm folding laundry or trying to fall asleep. But there was this one time, or actually 2 times, where I swear something came through the damn screen at me. And I know how that sounds, like I'm not even a "the veil is thin" type person. But yeah. First time was about 3 summers ago, crashing at my cousin's trailer out near the lake, half drunk on some, I don't know, natty ice or something. Watching some late-night ghost video, not the polished ones, this was one of those shaky cam, exploring, haunted whatever types. Except these guys were in some abandoned orphanage somewhere in Ohio. Real classic setup, peeling wallpaper, busted toys and all that. Anyway, they're filming this ball rolling on its own down a hallway. Everybody in the comments was doing that whole "I don't claim this negative energy" copy-paste thing. I didn't think twice, I just kept watching, but then out of nowhere I got this ice-cold wave through me, like my whole body was locking up. My chest felt crushed, like somebody had dropped a sandbag on me. And my eyes, God, they burned like when you've stared at a campfire for too long. My mouth tasted of iron. Next thing I know, I'm on the couch shaking, trying to sit up, and then I wipe my face and my nose is bleeding. Like, what the hell, from a YouTube video? Lasted 2 or 3 minutes, then gone. Back to normal, except kind of woozy. Sat there staring at the pause button like it was a loaded gun or something. Second time, different channel, different feeling. These guys were streaming some overnight quote-unquote challenge in a farmhouse that was supposed to have been used for exorcisms back in the day. Wasn't even watching seriously. I just had it on while I scrolled at my phone, but near the end of it, they started reading prayers or chants. I don't even remember what, some mix of Latin and "be gone" spirit type stuff. And I don't know if it was the sound or the words or just me being tired, but it hit me all at once again. Heat rushed up through my body like fever and fast. My head started pounding and vision going fuzzy at the edges and same chest pressure and some choking feeling. And again, the damn nosebleed. Except this time I slammed the laptop shut so fast I nearly cracked it. I sat in silence for a long while, listening to my own heartbeat and waiting for it to stop racing. I didn't tell anybody about this until now, because how do you even explain it? Yeah, a couple of YouTubers made me bleed from the face. My cousin would have just laughed and said I was drunk, but I wasn't the second time. Maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe migraines, or some psychosomatic sort of junk, but I'll tell you this, I don't let ghost videos run past midnight anymore. And I scroll past anything with "I do not claim this energy" in the comments, just in case. The Cornfield Road. A couple weeks back, I still kind of feel weird about this. I live in a little farming town, not much going on here. There's fields, and then there's more fields. There's this dirt road that cuts right through between two big cornfields, and people use it as a little bit of a shortcut to the highway. I've walked it 100 times, day and night. Never thought much about it, except maybe worrying about coyotes. So it's late, maybe around 11, and I'm walking back from my cousin's place, and the crickets were going like crazy. My air smelled like fertilizer. Kinda sour, but kinda used to it. My earbuds were in, well, at least one of them. One was out, just to hear if a car would come up behind me. And that's when I noticed something. I could hear footsteps. Not crunching sounds in the dirt, but something a little bit softer. Like somebody stepping in the weeds along the edge of it. They didn't match mine. I'd stop, and after a second I'd hear this little shuffle, like a delayed echo, but not quite. Kept telling myself it was probably a raccoon. Then I heard it again, this breathing, this slow breathing. Like somebody out of sight was just keeping pace with me in the corn. I swear the rows were rustling too. I couldn't see anybody when I shined my phone light. Just stalks waving a little through the air. By the time I hit the halfway point, I was walking fast, almost jogging, and I don't scare easily. My stomach felt like it dropped out of me. And right as I was reaching the bend in the road, it was clear as day, I heard a voice, and it was low. It was right next to my left ear, and it said something I couldn't make out. Just this wet whisper, like words pulled through water. It ran the rest of the way and didn't stop until I was back on the main road. Haven't taken that shortcut since, and I keep thinking, though, there's no one out there that late, not in those fields. Should have been anything, but I can still hear that whisper if I think about it for too long. The Thing by the River. I don't usually post stuff like this, but I'm reading a lot now, and I figured maybe somebody had something close to what I went through. This happened back in 21, late summer. Once again, in rural Kentucky. My cousin lives way out. You know, the kind of place where the dirt road just sort of ends, and then it's all hills and trees after that. I was crashing at his trailer for the weekend, and we'd been drinking cheap beer by the fire pit. Pretty sure it was Schlitz. Maybe midnight or a little bit after that. Cicadas were so loud, I remember we had to turn the radio up. At some point, he nudges me and goes, "Shut up and listen." Thought he was just messing with me, but when we turned the music down, there was this, I don't know, like voices. Not quite talking, more like chatter that you couldn't really make out. It wasn't close, but it really wasn't far either, like across the river maybe. Then, clear as anything, I heard laughter, but wrong laughter. It started with one person and stretched out into two or three, kind of overlapping, like a recording skipping. We stared at each other, and my cousin's half blind without his glasses, so it was me who saw it first. There's this tree line across the water. Moonlight was decent that night. No clouds. I switch, I watch something. Oh, I switch. I swear I watched something standing like a man. And he was folding itself down on all fours, and it was too quick, like bones clicking. Looked like a big dog, but still human-shaped, if that makes any sense. My heart just sort of dropped, and I kept elbowing and whispering, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And it moved slow, like it wanted us to know it was there, but not coming to run at us necessarily. Made noises I can't even put words to. Like a bark that cut off into a scream. The hair on my arms is just standing up while I write this, and in the clearing on the far side, we see this shadow. It's big, it's bigger than a man. And the sound it made, God. 3 seconds maybe, but high-pitched like a siren, like a train or a whistle, and a woman screaming smashed together. Ears ringing, stomach in knots. Then it laughed again, but closer this time. Next thing I know, it's charging, and I don't care what it says. covered that river way too fast. We bolted inside, slammed the door, shoved the cooler against it like that would do anything. I sat in the dark, staring at the window that faced the river until sun came up. People I told just laugh or say it was coyotes or too much booze. I've hunted, fished, and camped all my life, and I never heard anything like that. And I can't forget the scream. Even now, if I think too hard, I hear it in my head. The thing in the trailer hallway. So, when I was growing up in Oklahoma, which was a real small town, and when I was 9, my mom was renting this beat-up single-wide trailer. Summers were boiling hot, no air conditioning, just a box fan in the window rattling all night. My mom worked nights at a diner, so it'd just be me, my little sister, and my grandpa. They moved in after my grandma had died. One night I couldn't sleep because I'd eaten way too many fried bologna sandwiches earlier. And yes, I was a chunky kid, and I decided to walk down the hall just to, move around and maybe get sleepy. And that's when I saw my grandpa, except he was already in his room, snoring like a freight train. I could hear him. But there he was, standing in the hallway by the busted coat rack, kind of smiling at me. Like, really smiling. Peeked into his room just to check, and yeah, he's still in bed, and when I turned back, Grandpa was still there, looking at me. He goes real soft. Want to play jacks on the porch? It's cooler outside. The thing is my grandpa hated going outside at night. Said the bugs ate him alive. Didn't make sense. Still, I followed him a few steps because I was a dumb kid and it sounded kind of fun. Get to the back porch and he's pointing out to the dark yard, and there's this old shed out there. It hadn't been used in years, the floor was half caved in. And in the moonlight, I swear I saw him again waving from inside the shed. Like the real him was in the shed and the one next to me was, well, I don't know. He was whispering at me to come down the steps and said that he'd catch me. That's when something clicked. My stomach dropped and I thought, this is not my grandpa. I backed up and I tried to go inside, and suddenly I felt something tug on the back of my t-shirt pretty hard. The voice changed and got deeper, almost like two voices at once yelling at me for not listening. I bolted into the living room, shaking my sister awake, but she just rolled over. My grandpa didn't wake either, even though usually he woke at the sound of a pin dropping. So I just ended up curling back into bed with my blanket over my head. The last thing I remember before I must have passed out was seeing something in like the corner of the TV stand. Had long hair and bent up like its joints didn't work right. There was a tongue hanging out. Thought maybe it was my sleep paralysis, but I don't know. I don't want to say witch or demon or whatever, but it felt wrong. Never told anybody because I knew they'd just laugh. But even now, still can't sleep with my bedroom door open. The little hand in the motel room. Not really sure if this belongs in this particular thread, but I've been chewing on it for a while. I was staying at this tiny roadside motel outside of Amarillo. It was a couple summers ago. Just one of those places where it smells like cigarettes no matter where you are in it. I've been driving all day and ate some gas station burritos, and I crashed early. Gas station burritos. So that night I dream I'm stuck in this motel bathroom with the lights flickering. I'm tugging at the handle, but it won't open, and out of the corner of my eye the wallpaper starts bending. Like bubbling almost. Then this little hand, like a kid's hand, just slides out of the wall and grabs mine. And in the dream I'm screaming, but no sound's coming out of my mouth, and then I just wake up. And the thing is my right hand is still being held, and I swear on my life it felt small and cool like a kid's. I laid there in the dark, staring at that ugly motel popcorn ceiling. I was too scared to turn my head. And after 3 or 4 seconds, I kind of pulled my hand back and the feeling just stopped. It was gone. Couldn't fall back to sleep. Fast forward to a couple nights later. Still there because I had to wait on some paperwork for a job, and I wake up around dawn. There's this shape, and it's squatting at the end of the bed with blonde hair and it looked like a boy. My brain was still foggy, so I rubbed my eyes and I glanced back and it's gone. Could have been the weird shadow from the busted mini fridge and chair, I guess. I don't know, it looked too clear. Funny thing is the owner told me later the motel used to be part of some family's house back in the 40s or something. That was before they expanded. He didn't say more, just shrugged like he'd heard stories before. I know dreams can bleed into waking up and shadows do funny things. But I still remember the feeling of that little hand. It wasn't a dream feeling. It was real. The Girl in the Orchard. I was about 17, give or take. I grew up in a small farming town. Nothing much to do, and my uncle used to let me help him out at his orchard during the weekends. So one afternoon, we're just hauling baskets of apples back toward the shed, and I got to talking with this old neighbor who wandered over. She's one of those folks who, well, she always seemed to know more than she should. People said that she had the sight, in quotes. Never seen anything actually ghostly myself, but I was into weird stuff like hauntings and UFOs and all the late-night radio junk. So I asked her, kind of half-joking, if she'd ever seen anything in the orchard. She didn't laugh, though. She just kind of squinted out toward the trees. Then she told me she'd be seeing the same girl for years now. She said she looked like a teenager, with long braids, always standing by the old fence line or sometimes sitting under the big walnut tree near the road. At first, she didn't think much of it, apparently. Thought maybe it was somebody from town wandering through, but the girl never aged, and she never answered if you called her. Later, she told me that my uncle's place was built on land that used to belong to a family who lost their daughter in some freak accident, like a barn fire, I think. Supposedly, the girl had been running around the orchard the day it happened, playing hide and seek. And the part that sticks with me is while the neighbor was talking, I kept thinking about my cousin Emily. She died about 6 years earlier from a car crash. Same age, same braids, and my mind went cold, and for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was her hanging around like she hadn't moved on. Actually came back to the orchard alone that night. Might have been dumb. Shed was busted, so it was dark as hell. Just me and the bugs. Sat on a crate and whispered like an idiot, telling Emily I was sorry and telling her it was time to come home and that we missed her. My chest hurt like crazy and I was just bawling there by myself. After a while, I swear this soft tap in my arm, like I turned and God, it wasn't Emily. It was a pale girl I didn't recognize. She smiled, really crooked, like her mouth wasn't used to it, and said in this whispery voice, "Take me with you?" Well, I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out because I woke up lying in the dirt with my jacket over me, like somebody had tucked me in. Never told my uncle. I just said I'd gotten sick and I never went back to the orchard after dark again. What eats at me, it isn't the creepy girl. It's wondering if Emily's at peace or if she's still out there, waiting somewhere. Somewhere I haven't thought to look yet. The night the jars fell. Back in maybe 2007, I was living with my grandma in this old farmhouse out in Kentucky. It's a real drafty place. I was 10, I think, and my grandma just kept all these mason jars up in a tall cupboard in the kitchen. like way above my head at the time. It was filled with buttons and dried beans and nails and that kind of random stuff old folks like to keep. I liked that stuff. Anyway, one night I went to bed after watching Wheel of Fortune with her. She stayed up knitting in the living room, and I remember falling asleep hard and then waking up because something clattered in the floor near my bed. And at first, I thought maybe one of the cats had snuck in. But when I opened my eyes, I swear to you, there were 3 mason jars sitting on my quilt, right on my legs. Not broken, not cracked, just sitting there like somebody placed them there. Thing is the cupboard was in the kitchen, a good 10 feet away and high up. No way those jars could have fallen, landed neatly on me, on the 2nd floor no less. Plus, my door was half shut, and I would have heard it if my grandma came in carrying stuff. I yelled for her, she came running. She froze in the doorway when she saw the jars. Didn't say much, just whispered something about that damn house. Scooped him up real quick. She didn't want to talk about it. I never felt quite right in that room again. Always had this feeling somebody was leaning over me. The air was always heavy and damp almost. The corners stayed dark no matter how many lamps you turned on. Sometimes I think maybe it was just the age of the place. Maybe he was messing with me. But those jars, they were heavy and glass, full of stuff. There's no cat there. No draft, and no kid could have pulled that off. Still think about it sometimes when I hear glass clink at night. The locked gym pool. A few summers back, I worked nights at a small town hardware store. I rented this old brick apartment building that used to be a YMCA. Like, no joke, the downstairs still had a half-gutted basketball court and what used to be a pool. That's awesome. The pool had been closed for renovation since I moved in, but everybody knew that that was just landlord speak for it'll never reopen. The doors were supposed to be locked, chains on every entrance, the whole deal. But one night after my shift, I couldn't sleep. I was too wired and too much gas station coffee. I wandered the halls and found the side door to the pool area just pushed open. The chain wasn't even latched. Curiosity got me, so I went in. The place smelled like chlorine and dust at the same time, which kind of a weird mix. The pool was half full of water, not drained like I thought it would be. The surface was dark still. Overhead lights flickered on some timer. It was humming, but most of them were even out. So I sat on the tile edge, just dangling my feet, listening to the hum of the lights. The place was dead silent otherwise, and then a splash, clear as day. Not like a drip or pipe noise, I mean the sound of somebody diving in. I jerked my head up so fast I almost fell in. Water rippled like crazy, like somebody was swimming laps and fast. You know that sound when strong arms cut through water? It's like that steady rhythm. It was just like that. I waited for her head to pop up and for somebody to crack a joke about me trespassing, but there was nothing. Water went flat, perfectly flat. No drips on the tile, no wet footprints. Just me and the sound of my own pulse in my own ears. I remember backing out real slow, feeling like if I moved too quickly, I'd see something I didn't want to see. Locked the chain behind me even though it hadn't been locked before, and the funny thing is, I asked one of the older tenants about it a week later, half joking, and he shrugged and he said, "Kids drowned in that pool once. Nobody uses it now." Then he walked off like he just told me the weather. Maybe pipes and maybe my brain, but I swear I heard those strokes. Sounded like somebody who never got out. The voice in the trailer. A couple of years ago, my wife and I bought this beat-up little camper trailer. One of those older ones from the 70s with wood paneling inside. Had an avocado green stove and smelled like mothballs no matter how many times we cleaned it. We parked it out in the back of edge of our property so we could fix it up slowly. Maybe use it for hunting trips or just when he needed a quiet spot away from the kids. Anyway, weird stuff started happening once we started tearing things out. The first time was when I was pulling the old linoleum up in this kitchenette. Our dog, a lazy old hound who rarely even barks at the mailman, just sat up stiff and stared hard at the empty doorway. Then his head kind of moved like he was tracking something through, like walking. There was a low growl and he had teeth showing. Didn't seem like anyone was there. Figured maybe a raccoon, but the door was shut. A few nights later, I was sitting inside with a lantern, just checking the wiring, and I swear as plain as day I heard a man's voice say, "Well, you fixed it up nice." It was clear, like somebody standing right behind me. I even thought it was my neighbor Frank dropping by. So I opened the door and yelled out, and there was nothing. Just the sound of crickets and my wife's voice far off in the distance calling the kids inside the main house. I laughed it off, but also my skin crawled like you don't expect compliments from thin air. That'd be nice. Every time we make a change, painted the cabinets, put in new cushions, or something small sort of happens. A dog growling, a faint shuffle, that kind of thing. My wife swears she heard somebody humming once. That's when she was scrubbing the sink, and could have been wind through the vent, sure, but it didn't sound like the wind. I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe whoever owned it before is just hanging around curious about what we're doing. If it's a ghost, it seems harmless, just opinionated. Not scary exactly, but unsettling. The Thing in the Orchard. I never thought I'd write something like this, but here we go. I was living with my uncle in a small farming town in Kansas. Just lots of cornfields and a little church that only opened on Sundays. My uncle's house was old and it creaked a whole lot, and you kind of get used to it after a while. But one night I swear I heard something that wasn't the house, so let me set the scene. It was late and maybe close to midnight, and I couldn't sleep. I went out back to grab some air. Just stood in the porch in my socks, kind of half awake. And that's when I heard it. Heavy footsteps kind of dragging, coming from the orchard. Thought it was one of the neighbor's cows that had gotten loose. Happens sometimes. So I squinted into the dark, and I swear on my life, I saw a shape move between the trees. At first, it looked like a tall man, like a real thin one. Then it kind of dropped down and bent weird, and the next sound, I could have sworn it was a dog, maybe a coyote. But it was bigger, much bigger, and it moved wrong, like it didn't know how legs were supposed to work. I just froze there, and my heart was beating like a drum. Then I heard this awful snorting sound, like when a bull gets mad. And that's when I bolted back inside and locked the door, and I didn't even care if my uncle thought I was nuts. The part that really messes me up, though, is next morning my aunt, who was pregnant at the time, woke up sick as a dog. Fever and couldn't keep food down and was shaking. The doctor came out and didn't find much wrong. Just told her to rest. But the old lady down the road, she crossed herself and said something walked through your orchard last night. It was like she already knew. I don't know what I saw, and I don't even like talking about it. Maybe it was just my brain playing tricks, or maybe there really are things out there that slip into shapes they don't belong in. All I know is after that night, I never stepped outside after dark without the porch light blazing. And even then, I'd catch myself staring at the trees, waiting for something to move again. Anyone else ever seen something shift like that? Like it can't decide what it wants to be. Sounds like a deer. The red string in the barn. I'm going to write this out, a little bit messy. 19, living out my grandparents' farm in Kentucky. Went through this dumb, heartbreaking breakup, and the guy, we're going to call him Matt, wasn't even that great, but he was my first real boyfriend, you know. I was wrecked and I couldn't eat for days, and I walked around the pasture like some ghost, and my cousin, half joking, told me, tie a red string around his name and hide it in the barn rafters, and he'll come crawling back. Some old Appalachian folk thing, probably. Well, I didn't want him back, but I wanted him to feel it, you know, to hurt like I was hurting. So one night I sat in the kitchen table, tore a scrap of paper from my notebook, and wrote Matt in big shaky letters. I tied it up with this bright red yarn I stole from my grandma's sewing basket. So I climbed into the old hayloft, and there's dust everywhere and bats squeaking. I shoved it in a crack in the boards, and I remember my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from this weird, guilty excitement, like I was doing something real, not just teenage crying. I would have been scared of the bats. Nothing happened, of course. He kept driving around town in his stupid truck looking fine. Well, I got more embarrassed about sneaking into the barn like a witch. But eventually, I stopped thinking about it, and the red string thing just stayed up there forgotten. Fast forward almost 12 years later, packing up my grandparents' house after my grandma passed away. Everyone else took furniture, but I ended up in the barn sorting junk. And I found it, that dusty little bundle wedged between the boards, still tied neatly with that red yarn. My stomach dropped. I honestly thought I dreamed it. I laughed at myself, and I shook my head, and I pulled it down. Felt stupid even holding it. But for whatever reason, I didn't just toss it. I lit a match right there in the barn and burned it in a coffee tin. The smell was awful. Burning yarn and old dust and paper. I remember muttering something like, "All right, Matt, I let you go, no hard feelings." Next day, my sister drove up from Louisville to help. Having coffee on the porch when she started scrolling through her phone and went pale, and she said, "Holy crap." And she showed me the news. A car accident. Some guy lost control on the highway the night before around midnight, and the driver's name was Matt. And yeah, I know it was probably just a coincidence. People crash cars every day, but the timing I burned that red string thing maybe 10 hours before. I don't tell the story out loud much because it makes me sound crazy, but sometimes late at night I wonder if I didn't let him go after all. If maybe I pushed him off the road without meaning to. The leftover plate. Never quite written anything out like this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it anyway. Back when I was working at this tiny diner, it was in the 2000s maybe, I rented a super cheap place across from the train tracks. One of those buildings where the walls are so thin you hear your neighbors sneezing. So I ended up hanging out a lot with this girl from work, Marcy. She was from West Virginia with a loud laugh and always smelled like vanilla body spray. We'd close up the diner and then go grab burgers or walk around Walmart just for something to do. Now Marcy had this quirk. Whenever we ate together, she'd take a little bit of her food, like 3 fries or a spoonful of beans, and set it aside, not touching it. At first, I thought she was just picky, maybe saving room, and never asked because, people got their habits. One night, we were splitting nachos. She did it again, pushed a little pile off to the side. I was joking around and said, "Don't waste it, I'll eat it." I grabbed a chip before she could say anything. She gave me this look, like half scared and half mad, but didn't say a word, just kind of quiet the rest of the night. I felt like a jerk, but figured it was nothing. A couple of days later, I started feeling off and tired all at the same time, dragging myself to work and couldn't even finish my shift. And the strangest part is nobody checked on me. Like normally, Marcy would be calling or my cousin would swing by, but it was just like I slipped out of everyone's head. I laid in bed in that crappy apartment sweating till we'd even make ramen. One night in that half-asleep, half-awake state, I swear I felt something pulling on me. Not like one thing, more like a bunch of hands tugging at my arms and ankles. I couldn't move, and I thought, this is it, I'm done. Then I don't even know how to explain this, but I saw this huge, bright horse, like a white one, glowing like a lantern. It stomped its hoof, and these shadows scattered, and I sat up gasping like somebody had splashed me with cold water. The next morning, Marcy actually called me. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Where have you been? It's like I forgot about you all week." And that freaked me out worse than the dream, honestly. Later I told my grandma, and she's an old-school Appalachian and believes in signs and haints. Never heard that word in my life. Signs and haints. She got real serious and asked if I'd eaten anything meant as an offering. That's when I remembered the nacho thing. Turned out, Marcy always leaves a piece for company, like the spirit she thought kept her safe, and by eating it, I basically told them, yeah, I'm gonna take what's yours. Grandma gave me like a little cross pendant to wear and made me keep salt by the door. Said the horse was likely a protector showing up at the right time, but she warned me that once you've been noticed, you don't get forgotten. So yeah, still gives me chills, and I keep my hair cropped short these days. I don't know if that's superstition or just me hanging on to what Grandma said, but I'll tell you this. Never touch anybody's leftovers again. What does your hair have to do with anything? The old trailer out back. This might sound nuts, but I'm just gonna throw it here. A couple years back, after my divorce, I moved into my uncle's old trailer. This beat-up single-wide parked out in the sticks, kind of hidden behind some pines. It let me stay rent-free as long as I mowed a lot, and, well, sounded like a deal at the time. At first, it was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. No neighbors except one guy who kind of seemed to collect junk cars, and even he was quiet. But after a week or two, stuff started happening that I still don't really have an explanation for. First time, it was the bathroom door. Slammed so loud it shook the whole trailer, and I thought maybe the wind got it. But the windows weren't open, and I grabbed my flashlight and I checked every inch. Even under the bed, like a little kid. Nothing. Went back to bed, but I couldn't shake it. You know that feeling when your body knows something's off even when your brain's trying to be logical, sort of like that. It kept happening. Not every night, but often enough that I stopped sleeping well. Always that same slam, like someone wanted my attention. I'd tell myself maybe the frame's just warped or the old trailer settling or something, but I didn't even buy my own excuse. So one weekend, my sister came to crash on the couch. It's around 3 a.m., and there it was again. Slam. She sat up wide-eyed, looked at me, and whispered, "You heard that too, right?" And we stayed awake till dawn, drinking coffee like idiots, pretending it wasn't terrifying. The creepiest part happened when I got home late one night from the plan. I'm fiddling with the busted mini blinds by the kitchen sink, and I swear, plain as day, I heard somebody say my name, right into my ear. I spun around so fast I smacked my elbow on the counter. Nothing there. But then the radio on top of the fridge crackled on, and it's this old boxy thing with the busted antenna. It hasn't worked in years. And it just hissed like static. And then some voice came through. Couldn't make out words, just this garbled muttering. It scared me so bad I unplugged it and tossed it outside. The last straw for me, I was heating soup and I caught a glimpse of somebody in the hallway. Not like a shadow play, more like a full-on dude, and short, dark hair, plaid shirt tucked into faded jeans, standing there like he belonged there. I dropped the ladle. I ran outside, called my sister, told her what I saw. She went real quiet and then said, "That's Uncle Kenny. He used to wear plaid every damn day." Thing is, Kenny died in that trailer in the 90s. And I'd forgotten about that until she reminded me. Now, I don't know if it was him or what, but I couldn't take it anymore. Moved out the next month. Trailer's still sitting there, though. Overgrown and lonely. Sometimes I get the urge to stop, but I never do, and my gut says he's still in there. The garage incident. A couple of weeks back, it's been bugging me. I work nights at this old auto shop. The kind of place that smells like grease, and no matter how much you clean it, still smell like grease. It was about 3 a.m. and dead quiet, except for the humming of that ancient soda machine in the corner over there. Sweeping near the back, right by the sort of tire racks that we have. That's when I heard this sharp clank. I look over, and the lid from the big steel parts bin, we keep old brake rotors in there, was on the floor. And the thing is that lid weighed a ton. It's not one of those plastic snap-on deals. You have to lift it with both hands. It doesn't just fall, almost like a sewer grate. No one else was in the shop either, so I just froze and broomed my hand like an idiot, and for a second I thought maybe a rat had crawled under it and knocked it over. But I'd worked there long enough to know the sound of that lid, and it was lifted, not slid. I swear I saw it shake before it went down like somebody was messing with it. And across the alley, it's this old funeral home, shut down for years, but people say the basement's still used for quote-unquote storage. I know, storage. My boss always jokes that the ghosts just wander over when they're bored, and I laughed about it before, but standing there in that empty garage staring at that heavy lid on the floor, I wasn't laughing. So I picked it up, put it back on, tried to keep working like nothing happened. I kept looking over my shoulder, because every little noise after that, the air compressor kicking in or a wrench slipping, damn near jumped out of my skin. The fourth person at the cabin. I want to say this was 5 or 6 years ago. My cousin had this little cabin out by a lake in Minnesota. He invited me and my brother over one fall weekend, and we got there late, almost like 9 or 10 at night. It was already dark, the kind of dark where you can't see the trees until you're right up on them. My brother hopped out right away, but I stayed in the truck because I was trying to untangle the stupid aux cord from my damn phone. And I remember being kind of annoyed because it kept nodding up. It's one of those braided kind. Don't know why they even do that. Anyway, I had the headlights off, but from where I was parked, I could see the living room window. The light inside was this soft yellow, kind of dim, and I could make out my cousin moving around and my brother stepping in behind him. And then there was this other figure just standing still and tall and definitely a person shade. Not moving, not shifting, and I figured it was one of his buddies. We'd been told a few people might drop by for drinks. I didn't think too much, just kept messing with the damn cord. With all those damn little Brady knots. When I finally gave up and went inside, I was expecting like 3 people in there, but it was just my cousin and my brother. No one else, no coats by the door, no beers cracked open, and no, hey, this is so-and-so. Just the 2 of them. I didn't say anything right then because, I don't know, I didn't want to sound weird, but I did look around the room. The spot I'd seen that figure, well, was empty. No tall lamp, no weird furniture, just the wall. And later that night, after a few beers, I asked my cousin if he'd invite anyone else. He laughed and said, nah. Didn't bother since it was so last minute. I never pushed it, but man, to this day I still get this tight feeling in my chest and I think about it. Like who the hell was standing in that room before I walked in? And sometimes I tell myself I saw a reflection in the glass or something, but the thing is the figure wasn't in the window. It was in the room. And man, do I hate when braided cables get all tangled. The Thing by the Mill. Out in Missouri, there's a little river town. It's a real quiet place. It's a place where nothing really changes, and We had this old grain mill at the edge of town. It's a big brick building that's been around since forever. They don't use it anymore, but they turned part of it into a kind of community hall, like where they do bingo nights and fish fries. And if you're lucky, bingo night with fish fries. When I first moved back home after college, I'm working nights at this pizza place. It used to be an old garage. My dad would sometimes swing by to give me a ride because my car was garbage. But anyway, one night we're parked waiting for the manager to close up when I noticed something moving across the roof of the hardware store. Now, kids climb roofs all the time around here. Everybody knows how to shimmy up the fire escapes or sneak through the back alley ladders. But this wasn't kids. It was like the way it moved. It wasn't right. It was fast but weirdly slow, like skipping frames in a video. First, I thought maybe I was tired and my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then it wasn't just one. There were a few drifting across different rooftops, and they all seemed to be headed toward the old mill. My dad's talking about something totally normal, but I just kind of froze and I was stuck watching them. I didn't even know then that the train tracks used to run behind the mill. Found that out later when I got curious and looked up at the library. Some of those tracks, they're so under the asphalt, just paved right over. Guess that explains why on certain nights I swear I can hear a train rumbling by, even though no trains have come through here in decades. So one night I'm waiting alone and I saw the shapes again. Same deal, moving roof to roof all toward that mill, but this time I could make out details. A couple of them looked like they were carrying rifles, like long guns, like old ones. Civil War era, early 1900s or something. I don't know guns, but they didn't look modern. Can't tell if they were there to protect something or if they were the ones planning trouble, but sometimes I think they are guards, or sometimes I'm thinking they're bandits. Been years now, but every now and then if I'm out late, I'll glance up at the rooftops. And once in a while, just faint, I'll still see something moving toward that mill. When the night's real still, I swear I hear that train whistle echoing through town. I don't tell people around here because folks don't like to talk about ghosts unless it's Halloween, but I know what I saw. The girl in the trailer office. This happened back in 2016, give or take. I was working a construction job in West Texas, one of those projects where they set up a bunch of trailers as makeshift offices. And our crew had the safety meetings in the main trailer, and honestly, the place always smelled faintly of mildew and coffee. So weird stuff started happening around springtime. Guys swore they saw a girl wandering around the trailers at night. Not like one of us. Nobody had family there. No women worked on site at the time, at least, just some girl. People said she'd be by the soda machine or just kind of leaning near the copy machine, kind of slouched like she was waiting on something. Sometimes early mornings you'd hear the bathroom flush even though the door was locked and nobody came out. It spooked a lot of us, especially the younger hands. Some of them flat up refused to go in alone, which was ridiculous, but I guess I can't really blame them. Never saw her full on, but once I swear I caught movement in the corner of the break room mirror. Long hair, gray shirt, maybe. Could have been nothing, but I remember freezing holding my coffee. And the funny part is, all this started right after a new foreman, whose name was Pete, which is not his real name, came onto this job, and he's from another site down near San Angelo, and kept mostly to himself. But he had this exhausted look about him, like he hadn't slept right in years. One of the older welders told me later that at his last site, Pete had some drama. Folks whispered that she died not long after she quit. Some said overdose, others said suicide, and nobody seems to know for sure, just that it was messy. And after Pete suddenly quit our site, just packed up and left without so much as a goodbye, and the sightings stopped. The bathroom went back to normal. No more phantom flushing. No girl by the soda machine, no nothing. I'm wondering if she followed him. Was she tied to this guy somehow? I don't know, but I never saw Pete again. Nobody could tell me where he went, and sometimes late at night I'd picture him in some other rundown trailer office, sitting alone with his coffee. Maybe she's still there, just standing behind him waiting. The Woman by the Mill Road. Back when I was in high school, a small town in Indiana, we had this stretch of road everybody called Mill Road. Nothing special, just a long, dark, and kind of twisty one. And at the end, there's this old grain mill that's been shut down since forever, so kids would go there to drink or whatever. Anyway, the story was always that a young woman died there in the 70s. The way I heard it, she was waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up for some dance at the school homecoming, maybe prom. People tell it different. She thought his car was coming down the hill. She ran right into the road waving her arms, but it wasn't him. Some poor guy hit her and she died right there. Folks said she lived just up the road from the mill, a little white farmhouse that's gone now. I didn't really believe it until one night my buddy drove us down Mill Road around midnight. Just us two in his old truck. Radio crackling, headlights barely cutting through the fog. Out of nowhere, I swear I saw a woman in a long pale dress dart out across the road. My friend hit the brakes so hard we both almost ate the dashboard. When we got out, there was nothing. Road was empty, just the crickets and smell of cornfields. He laughed it off, said it was probably my eyes playing tricks, but the thing is I smelled this faint perfume like old flowers. You know, the kind your grandma keeps in the bathroom. It lingered even after we got back in the truck, and he smelled it too, though he wouldn't admit it till years later when we were drunk. People in town always said that she only shows up the night she died. Nobody knows the date for sure. Some swear it's in September. Others say May, and I never saw her again. But I can't drive that road without slowing down at that bend by the mill. It just feels heavy, like somebody's still waiting. I'm not saying it's real, just felt real that night. See ya. Gonna go eat some dashboards.
Dive deep into the realm of the unexplained. Paranormal M is your window to a universe filled with paranormal activity and supernatural occurrences. Don't miss out on our fascinating content. Subscribe and hit the notification bell today. Glimpses of the future. Sometimes when I'm not focusing on anything or just zoning out, I get a first-person perspective look at the environment. Like me standing in a certain place while a certain thing is happening. It's not like I'm actually there, I just see it in my mind's eye. I don't think anything of it until days later when I find myself in the exact position I envisioned before, with the exact same thing happening. It's an intense feeling of déjà vu, because I'm a skeptic. I don't write any of the images that I get down, because there's plenty of them that don't come true right away. And then I think that maybe I'm just thinking of common environments and then I go there. But when the thing I envisioned happens, I can always tell. It's more than déjà vu. It's like getting chills or sense of being unnerved. Why do I feel this way if I'm not even convinced what's happening is real? Sometimes I can remember exactly when I envisioned it, and sometimes I just get the unnerving feeling, and I know that I must have seen it at some point, even if I've forgotten when. The strange part about this is that I talked to my biological mother about it years ago, and she says the exact same thing happens to her. I haven't brought it up since then, but I'm going to. Unexplainable noises. For the past 3 days, I've been sleeping in my car at night. I want to get used to it for when I travel around the States. and I've been noticing strange noises happening in the right side of my driver of my car. Without the noises even happening, I've been feeling unsafe, as if my life is at risk. I think that fear is linked to me feeling a little bit vulnerable sleeping inside of a vehicle in a large town. I'm sure the quote-unquote van life folk felt that for a little bit too. At around 5 in the morning, I would hear 2 human footsteps on gravel. I've been sleeping in parking lots where no gravel is present. Weird, but whatever. And now at around 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. for the past 2 days, I've heard the sound of a van door open, click into a locking mechanism, and 1 foot step on gravel. The sound of that is incredibly close and happened on the described side of the vehicle, the driver's side. When this first happened, I shot up and looked around to find not even a single vehicle or a person next to my car, and the parking lot empty. Last night, I parked near a campground called Lincoln Beach Campground. It's right next to Utah Lake. I parked the right side of the car next to a thick wooden fence, not thinking anything about it. I parked close enough to where you could even be able to open the passenger door at the halfway mark without hitting the fence. At about 6:37 a.m., I heard the exact same van door open, click into the locking mechanism, and the foot step onto the gravel sound. This time it sounded strangely drawn out. The continuous sound of a single foot stepping on the gravel was trippy, to say the least. Honestly, the sound itself made no sense. Once again, on the right side of the driver's seat, I froze in fear because obviously nobody could be parked there. Slowly peeking my head up to investigate, I saw nothing but the wood fence next to me. This isn't the first time I've heard unexplainable noises coming specifically from the right side of the driver's seat inside my vehicle. My last post on this subreddit mentioned that I heard a deep growl of a beast from the exact same side of my vehicle. I wonder if something's been following me. What are your thoughts on this? My grandfather's experiences. My grandfather told me that when he was a young boy, about 8 or 10, him and his brother were playing in this old shell of a car that they had sitting next to their trailer on their farm. He said the car still had its seats and the steering wheel, but other than that, it was just a hunk of metal. Anyways, he said that they were sitting in it playing when all of a sudden they both got sleepy and fell asleep. When he woke up, he said that they, him and his brother, were looking down on down on the earth. And he asked the people where they were going, and they told him. 3 planets from behind the moon. He said he woke up back in the car next to his brother and they looked at each other, and my grandpa said that he asked his brother if they had the same dream, and he shook his head, yes, with wide eyes. But after that, his brother would only deny it in front of other people, so he never shared the story again, until that one night when I said I believe in aliens. After that happened to him, he's seen things and experienced things from that day on through. Up until about 10 years ago, when he said that they told him goodbye. That's another story. He was probably 66 or 70 years old then. If anyone would like to make more posts about other stories that he's told me, and the things that he's experienced, there's even been many times in his life where he should have died. I always told people that I believe I'm part alien because I think my grandfather is. Blonde girl with a hat. This is something that happened to me when I was in school. I was playing with my friends when I caught the feeling of someone watching me. It was a big break, so many kids were running around, playing catch me if you can, and all those kinds of things. And suddenly I see this girl leaning on one of the walls of our school building. She just stood there and stared at me with this evil expression. Although she looked very weird, she seemed to be older than me and had shoulder-long blonde hair. It looked thin and damaged. She also wore a black hat. You know, one like the magicians pull out the bunnies from. She was completely wearing black and had a cloak on that was black outside and red inside. She had her arms spread away from her body, like if her body would form a crucifix. I froze and stared back, confused from her weird appearance and behavior. Then she said, "What the fuck are you looking at?" She said it in such an aggressive tone that I looked away and tried to act like I didn't hear it. At this point, I was kind of scared at her and not sure really what to do, you know? She was still looking at me, watching me. When I blinked, she moved 1 meter from the spot she was standing before. I was so scared at this point, and then I saw how she made side steps, slowly moving to the door of the building that she was leaning on. She literally moved sideways, her bag touching the wall the whole time. Then she was gone. I thought to myself that it was stupid to react like I did. I should have confronted her. But she was so fucking scary. All the other kids were ignoring her. Nobody talked to her or gave her attention. I searched her directly after she disappeared, but I couldn't find her. I remember my friend also saw her, but it's been about 10 years, and we have no contact. I even did contact her some time ago, but she couldn't remember it. It's just a stupid feeling when something like this happens and you know it happened, but nobody seemed to care, and the only person that could prove my point doesn't remember it. I feel lost thinking about it, and I have no logical explanation. Since I was young, I could always tell if something is real or just fantasy. I recorded something strange with night vision in my house earlier this month. Had a couple of small and strange occurrences follow after that. About a month ago, I purchased a camera recorder for my PVS 14, the ANVRS MK3. I own a few night vision devices, and I wanted to be able to record while I go shooting at night. The night after it came into the mail, I clicked it onto my PVS 14 and tested it out in the house to see whether or not it was working. I started walking around my house, shining around my infrared light and the laser. I heard a noise behind me while I was walking into the hallway to the bedrooms. It sounded like it came from the sink. When I turned around, I saw nothing and kept goofing around. You can see shortly after this that I walk up to the kitchen and look at the sink, and I was still curious. I was still hearing this noise maybe, but nothing was there. It wasn't until checking the recording that I saw that there was a white figure standing by the sink when I turned around. In fact, you can see something crouched over the sink when I looked from the living room to the hallway shortly before. Important to note that the recorder is low quality, but I could see everything in that kitchen crystal clear when I turned around, and I didn't see anything odd. The light and the laser was not on when I turned around. I did have an infrared LED on the back of my helmet, and my best guess is that it's a reflection of some kind. Only issue with that theory is that I've tried to recreate it multiple times with the same conditions, and I've been unsuccessful. The house is relatively new, built in 1984, and while the owners that built the house recently passed away, they didn't die in the home. The following night, I was home alone, and an empty can fell over on the countertop and rolled into the sink while I was on the other side of the house. The second I heard it hit the countertop, the hair on my neck stood up. I knew for a fact that that can was sitting level on a flat surface with no open windows or source of a breeze. A week after recording this, my girlfriend gave me a call while I was at work. She said she felt like somebody was in the house. She said she couldn't explain why other than that she heard a loud clicking occasionally. I told her it was probably the thermostat kicking in and that I'd be home soon. My girlfriend woke me up the next morning wondering why I left the scissors in the middle of the floor downstairs in the den. I told her I know for a fact that I left them at the chopping block in the kitchen before I went to work the day prior. She said that she hadn't been downstairs in a couple of days. We're the only two in the house. Our house is a bi-level, and we mostly live upstairs. The downstairs has a bedroom, bathroom, and a den for guests. She was freaked out since she heard clicking the night before. Haven't had anything weird happen in the 3 weeks since. Link to video and a side-by-side comparison of the kitchen in the video versus how it looked a few hours later when the sun came up. The only editing I did, other than shortening the video and repeating the section in slow-mo, at the end was the cutting of the sound levels because the recorder's right in front of my nose. All you could hear was me breathing. I did turn it up to normal levels when I turn around. If you listen closely, you can hear the noise I heard. The time and date stamp is also incorrect. I'm unsure of how to change it so the recording stopped displaying it incorrectly. Thank you very much, Gecko. For years, I've been experiencing paranormal stuff. I think I'm finally starting to piece it together. My earliest memory was when I was 5 or 6 years old. My brother and I shared a room and our bed faced the hallway. Our door was always open, since me and my brother were young. I remember waking up and seeing a woman's finger. She had long painted black nails. Keep this in mind. For years, I had been having a reoccurring dream where I would be running away from her. I would eventually make it to an alleyway, and there would be an older guy with a doctor's coat yelling, "It'll be okay, come here." He would manage to capture her and restrain her in the hospital bed. Who is this her? I don't know much about her, but before the dream started, I'd gotten a very realistic dream. It felt as if it was actually happening. She was sitting on one of the dining room chairs with a doll on her lap that looked just like her. She had messy black hair, white laced gown, a veil, pale skin, and the exact black nails I saw a few years back. Please hang with me on this. This isn't the craziest part. In that dream, I couldn't speak. Remember that. I would see her in different forms, mostly as a doll, or her quote-unquote human form. I would see her everywhere. Didn't matter where I moved, she would appear in hallways and my bathroom. There would be nights that I would hear talking. It sounded like two people talking in gibberish. After 10 years of this, I finally told my parents about it. My mom prayed over and in my room. Later that night, my mom had a dream of her. She looked at my mom from on top of her bed, then grabbed her legs and dragged her to my room. My mom tried rebuking the demons, but guess what? She couldn't speak. I asked my mom for more details on how she looked because I didn't fully believe her. She told me she had a veil on, something I didn't tell her. But she said that the veil was covering her face. But with me, she had it up. I don't know why she had it up with me. I don't know why she's so persistent watching me. After that incident, it stopped, but I still sometimes feel as if someone is watching me. My experience with the paranormal. Okay, so I just thought I'd put this out there. Not really even as a warning, but more as a way to share information with individuals that could possibly go down a similar path to me, with the wrong mindset, and possibly make the same mistakes I did. I've always been fascinated by the supernatural and the paranormal, ever since I was a child, and my obsession began after reading the Darren Shan books. Anyway, that's beside the point. So when I went to uni, I started getting into a lot of occult reading. I went to uni in central London, and there's a bookstore, and it goes by Watkins. Anyway, I would spend many weekends there perusing the different occult books and the artifacts that they sold. Often they were very expansive, but I'd gotten a student loan and had some money to spare and to play with. Eventually, after many months, having read a number of occult books, I decided to get a Ouija board. Yeah, I'm a fool. So, after a couple of weeks, my girlfriend and I are just chilling in my uni room. We've had a little bit to drink, but not too much. I decide to bring out the Ouija board and see what she thinks. Needless to say, she was initially skeptical and apprehensive, which made sense. She has a family history of extremely proportions with the paranormal, but that's not my story to tell. Eventually, we nut up and decide to try. At first, nothing really happens. We ask silly questions, and I try to scare her a couple of times, as one does. So eventually, we start to relax more, and it turns into more of a game than a true experience, trying to contact the other side, in our minds at least. I decide my ignorance to call out to an entity while we're using it, Azazel, a name I'd read about in some of the occult books aforementioned. My girlfriend looked at me strangely, as at this point, I'm kind of just losing it calling out to this entity. Thinking back, I'm not really sure what compelled me. I shit you not, my curtains start to close really slowly by themselves, and my wardrobe starts opening and closing. To say we both shut ourselves, or I'm guessing he meant to write shit, to say we both shit ourselves would be an understatement. We ran out of there. We get a coffee and talk about it, but even at that point we're semi-laughing about it. Probably read too many books or something. Became desensitized, I don't know. I walk my girl to her dorm and go back to mine to sleep. That night, I have the most intense dream of my life. And let me tell you, it was a nightmare. I don't really feel like going into details right now, as I get severe anxiety when I visualize it too much. But basically, it was of hell, torture, and suffering. Years later, I've never touched anything to do with the occult since, other than protect myself against contact from entities that wish to do me harm. To say that the dream I experienced that night scared me would be putting it nicely. Seeing smoky shadows in my garden. Okay, so I live with my grandparents. As they have a small house, I sleep downstairs in the living room, which overlooks the garden through a pair of large sliding doors. I've been a smoker for years now, and will often find myself sitting outside late at night having a smoke. The strangeness began almost a month ago. So as I'm sitting watching some videos on my phone while having a late night smoke, I start to get a really bad headache. In my head, I'm assuming that I've just been on my phone too long, so I decided to switch for some music instead. As I'm listening, and about done with my smoke and ready to get up, I see a strange sort of black smoke figure near our conservatory at the end of my garden. I look at it for a while wondering what it could be. Or if maybe my mind is too addled from the lack of sleep and I've began hallucinating. Anyway, eventually I convinced myself that it's nothing and just go inside to sleep. Nothing happens until maybe 2 weeks later when the same thing happens. This time I use the torch on my phone to light up the area, but I can't seem to see anything. Once I shine my torch on it. So I get up, and in the same black, some figure in the gloom. Its head was angled towards me. To be honest, I was really scared. I felt like maybe everything I believed to be true about the world was wrong. Just to clarify, I'm a really skeptical person by nature, preferring to lead sort of on my assumption that the observable cannot influence us, even if some strange entities may exist. So yeah, I was in shock. I eventually gathered the courage to run inside, but I don't know. I've seen it from those big window doors twice since, and it's freaking me out. I feel like it's watching me. Creepy treehouse. A couple of nights ago, my friend and I spontaneously decided to go smoke really late into the night, like 2 a.m. Our new spot is his girlfriend's treehouse, which we've only gone to a few times, and it isn't too deep in the woods. It was an ice-cold night, so the leaves on the ground were frozen, leaving a loud crunch with every step we took. This will be important. We get to the treehouse and tried lighting the lighter, but it was out, so my friend left to go to his girlfriend's house to get a new one, which is only like a few hundred feet away. He left me alone, which I had no problem with at the time. I was able to hear him walk into the distance due to the loud crunches, and I decided to just go on my phone to pass the time. About a minute in, I heard more clearer than ever footsteps that just seemed to appear right underneath the treehouse and started walking around. For a second, I assumed it was my friend, but he had just left and there was no way that he'd be back already. I also realized that with the ground being frozen, I should have been able to hear his footsteps coming from far away, way ahead of time. As all this was going through my head, I heard the footsteps walk toward the bottom of the ladder and just stop. I completely froze and avoided moving, so that whatever was below me wouldn't hear me. I texted my friend hoping that he left his girlfriend's house and he was just messing with me, to which he responded that he was still over there. I told him what happened and to hurry back, but he didn't take me very seriously. Luckily, I had a cinder block right next to me, ready to throw at whatever was about to come up the ladder. A few minutes go by and I didn't hear the footsteps again. Of course, I heard my friend's footsteps coming from at least 50 feet away coming back. I just decided to completely forget about what happened, and we went on with our sesh. A little bit spooked out, though. Shadow people influencing my father's dreams. At the time, we were living on the ground floor of a small block of a 2-story unit. It was in the morning. My mother and I were sitting down watching the television, which was against the wall. Behind us on the right was my parents' bedroom. And to the right in front of us was the front door, and besides that, a window. I recall we were watching the TV when in the corner of my eye I saw movement. As I turned my head to see what was moving, I could see humanoid shapes speedily walking and maybe running into my parents' room. As if he walked in, through the window, I guess, though perhaps it was the door, and just went into the bedroom, not through their doorway, but straight through the wall, as the crow flies. I turned to face my mother and she was looking at the same thing. We were both surprised. I ran into their room to see what was there, and it was just my father laying down, fast asleep on the bed. So I returned back to the TV, thinking about what I had just seen, and about half an hour later or so, my father gets up saying that he had a dream that an ancestor of ours came to speak with him. He recounted the strange dream that he had and the person he was speaking to. I recall him outlining how the man he spoke to was dressed in his dream. I'll leave that out for privacy's sake, though. Now, looking back, I can't recall what the message my father received was, but my mother told him then that both of us had seen a shadow figure walk straight into the room not a while before he got up. He didn't seem too shocked. I'd later learned that it was not uncommon for this family. Ghost finger through the bathroom window. This event took place in 2020, around the end of the year, when I was in the shower living with my mom in an apartment building. Now, the bathroom has a small window just above the toilet, which saw into the lobby, which, if open, had a decent view of anyone in the shower. So naturally, we would usually have the window down almost completely. Now, this window is also frosted glass, so you can make out a figure on the other side, but with no great detail. Over this window was a fly wire netting with a small hole in it around the bottom about an inch or two from the window. Now, for reference, this hole is not big at all. It's tiny, but it is there. So one day I'm showering, window less than an inch open as usual, and then in the corner of my eye, a long, somewhat pale finger began to extend through the small gap I left open in the window. At this point, I'm just kind of too shocked to move, like a deer in headlights, but my mind was racing. I thought there was some creep trying to open the window or someone trying to scare me. I recalled the small hole in the fly wire net. So I was about to shout something out at this person. Based on the size of the finger, I thought it was a guy. Until I realized that this didn't add up. You could force fit your finger through the hole somewhat, sure. You would be scratching yourself on the exposed metal wire, though. But after the wire is a solid 1 to 2 inches of space before the window opening. With the amount of finger I was seeing, nearly to the start of the proximal phalanx, meaning that I could see past the knuckle. I was astonished that someone had a finger so long and that it could fit in the small gap between the window and the wire net. Thing was, I know everybody who shares my lobby. All the people on my floor were of Vietnamese or African descent. And there were few Caucasian people on the other levels, none of whom had such an abnormally long index finger. It was then that the finger began beckoning me. It folded up, like the gesture you would use to motion someone to come forward. At this point, I'm starting to entertain the idea that this is not a human being doing this. But the nail in the coffin for me was the fact that despite the finger gesturing for me to come forward, I could see no figure on the other side of the frosted window, no silhouette of a person whatsoever. A few seconds later, the finger retracts back through the window. And that was that. No sounds, no movements through the glass window. I got out of the shower immediately, went outside, no signs of anyone. Interested to see anyone's thoughts on this strange event. Something kind of strange happened to me a few years ago. I was living in an apartment townhouse with 2 other roommates. Both roommates were gone for a couple of days because it was Thanksgiving. They were spending it with family at each of their respective hometowns. I had the house to myself for 3 to 4 days. On the second night alone, I decided to make myself some macaroni in the kitchen around 1 a.m. So I'm stirring the noodles in the pot, and out of nowhere, I become very, very terrified and fearful. I felt something, and some kind of fear of being watched. I can't explain what this was. I looked over my shoulder almost to expect someone standing there, but there was nothing. I was trying to calm myself down because there was nothing, but I couldn't shake this absolute terror and fear. I felt it climaxing and rising up in me. It was rising and rising, and the hair stood on my arms and neck, and I felt close to a complete panic. And then pop! All the lights went out. It was pitch black, total darkness, and the stove turned off. And I became so terrified that I ran out of the kitchen with no shoes or coat. I ran out into the parking lot and felt like I was in a horror movie. There wasn't anyone for me to go, or there wasn't anywhere for me to go. I don't know my neighbors, and it's 1 a.m. My feet were freezing, as it was November, and after some time, I didn't know what to do but just calm down in the parking lot. I couldn't just not go back to my home, so eventually I just got brave enough and went back in. I found my phone and used it for a light. I called someone and told them how scared I was, but nothing could really be done. They didn't live near me. I eventually went to sleep and woke up with the lights working again and the soggy noodles on the stove. It just really freaked me out that my hair stood up, and I about had a panic attack before the breakers seemed to switch or whatever happened with the electricity. Could be nothing, I guess, but seemed strange that I felt absolute terror, like another sense came to me where I felt extremely unsafe. I had a really strange encounter with a woman at an antique store, and I don't remember a thing. This happened to me a few days ago, and I have no idea what to make of it. I have no one that I can comfortably talk to about this for answers, so I'm posting it here because I hope someone will take me seriously. I'm new to this community, so let me know if this breaks any rules somehow, and I'll adjust the post accordingly. Me and my friend, we'll call her Naomi, went to an antique store a few days ago. And as soon as we get inside, she says something feels off. She can't figure out what it is, but there's just a general feeling that something isn't right. Quote-unquote gut feelings aren't something that I really believe in, so I just told her everything was probably fine and we continued into the store. Naomi kept looking over her shoulder the whole time. Not in a frightened way, but more like she had her guard up and was on the lookout for anything that could go wrong. Whether that be a bookshelf falling over or somebody having a heart attack. She says she's psychic for that kind of thing, but again, I'm a big skeptic. There is one thing I find strange, though. I keep seeing someone out of the corner of my eye. I always notice them just a split second before they leave my line of sight behind another shelf or around another corner. You know when you think you see a shadow right at the edge of your vision, but nothing's there when you look? It was that exact sensation, but I know someone was there, and it wasn't just my imagination. It wasn't necessarily threatening yet, but still a tiny bit curious. Here's where things get weird. Naomi and I are pretty good at sticking together, and we go to shops like that. But we occasionally do go off in different directions. Normally, we'll at least give each other a heads up if we're splitting off to different sections, but at some point, I turned around and she was just gone. No warning or anything. Initially, I thought it wasn't a big deal because I figured that she'd turn up sometime. So I'm by myself in the back part of the store, and it's full of candles and astrology-themed stuff. I thought I was alone. But When I went to leave that section, there's some woman standing right behind me. Immediately, I just got a weird vibe from her, and I was super uncomfortable, like she was standing just a little bit too close to me than a normal person would. I stepped out of the way because I thought she was trying to get past me, but she just got even closer. Put me on edge enough that I started to hold my keys between my knuckles. Before I could tell her to back off, I had the sensation that I was falling asleep. Everything in my brain just started going fuzzy. It was getting harder to think. Next thing I know, I hear Naomi saying my name over and over, and I wake up, still standing in the exact same spot. The woman wasn't there anymore. I asked Naomi what happened, and she said that she'd been trying to get my attention for 2 minutes. Apparently, I had just been staring blankly ahead as if I was hypnotized or something. I remember none of those few minutes. It's all completely gone, like I was literally asleep, standing up with my eyes open. I asked if she'd seen the woman. She just got this serious look on her face and asked me, "Did she say anything to you?" I said I didn't hear her voice, but I was also a bit unaware of everything for a few minutes, so I just said that I don't remember. Naomi took my hand and walked us straight out of the store, and she wouldn't let me talk to her about it anymore. She was really freaked out to the point that she even checked the backseat of her car before we got back, like she was making sure nobody was hiding. She barely spoke the whole drive back. She dropped me off at home, and since then, we've only texted, but she'll change the subject every time I try to bring up what happened in the store. And she'll do everything she can to talk me out of going back like my life depended on it or something. I've been left without answers for this really weird encounter, and I needed to tell someone about it. If not for answers, then just for someone else to hear it and take me seriously. I know how it all sounds, and I'm pretty sure most people in my life would just think I'm crazy or something. I know I would assume my friend was crazy if they said the same thing to me. In terms of theories, I have nothing good. I don't think the woman drugged me because I can't find anything online about any drug that just incapacitates a person for 2 or 3 minutes before instantly wearing off. When I regained awareness, it wasn't like a gradual thing. It was like Naomi flipped a light switch. I don't think any drugs can do that without other side effects. The other thing I thought of was that maybe it couldn't have actually been some sort of hypnosis, but I'm pretty sure that also can't make any sense. From what I gather, it seems like somebody had to consent to being hypnotized for it to work. You can't just go up to a random person and hypnotize them without warning. And maybe this is just me being cocky, but I feel like I'd be pretty difficult to hypnotize anyway. Just to be clear, I don't take any drugs and I don't drink. I don't even use over-the-counter cold medicine when I feel sick. I typically just let everything heal by itself. Also, I have no history of mental illness besides what some people in the family think is an undiagnosed case of OCD. If anyone has any ideas, even if they're really quote-unquote out there, I'm willing to at least hear them. Again, I know how this all sounds, and even if you don't believe me, I appreciate people reading the whole thing. My daughter seems to be able to sense death. So my daughter, who's almost 13, has always seemed to have this kind of thing that she would do when impending doom was near. The first instance was when my grandfather was sickly. He had prostate cancer. Anyway, one morning we were over there helping my grandmother out. My daughter was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and we were just standing around talking. And I was talking to my granddaddy, and all of a sudden she comes up to me and taps me and says, "Mama, can I get in the bed with Granddaddy?" I I really didn't want her to because I was afraid that she'd kick him by mistake or something. But he was like, "Yeah, you can get up here, baby." She got on the bed and had this very weird, almost sad look on her face. I didn't think anything of it. So fast forward a week later, my granddaddy died. The next one, I sort of had to keep my friend baby girl. Sorry, the text is confusing. The next one was, I had to keep my friend's baby girl here while she worked, and later that day my daughter made it home from school, and me and the baby were laying in the bed. I was like 5 months pregnant. So she came and stood on the side of my bed rubbing the back of her hair, and she had the exact same look of sadness on her face as when my granddaddy did. But I didn't think to put the two and two together just yet. So she goes, "Mama, can I get in bed with the baby?" I said yes, and she laid down beside him, and she had a sad look all over her face. Well, the next week, the baby was dead from SIDS. This next incident involves my grandma. She was sick and I was feeding her, and she couldn't hardly talk, but she wanted to see my kids, so my daughter got up to her and looked at her face, and she had the same sadness from the last 2 times. Then the next day, my grandma was dead. The Rotten Woman. Back when I was in my late teens, I moved out of my hometown. I then rented a room from some couple. The woman didn't work, but her partner did, so she had lots of time on her hands, and she tried to control everything in the house, including me. I was working 2 jobs while studying. The woman who literally has no life besides from trying to mess up other people's lives started doing weird stuff. I woke up to find her watching me sleep. She stole my sunglasses, killed my fish, all in the name of being a cunt. She tried bossing me around and just trolling, though she would disappear every full moon to apparently get nude and dance with her coven in the mountains. She claimed to be a witch. Despite my interest in spirituality and tarot, I don't believe in witches or witchcraft. I think the spells work on a belief system that causes a domino effect of either positive or negative things occurring. Anyway, I decided that I'd had enough of tolerating her bullshit and I just moved out. That resulted in her stalking me by turning up at my workplaces and staring at me for hours. I reported her to the police, and then she tried to cyberstalk me by Facebook and phoning me 1,000,000 times. After moving into a new place, I would wake up in the night to see something standing in the corner of my room, yet whenever I got up or turned the light on, it disappeared. Hence, I assumed I was dreaming. Eventually, it started standing at the foot of my bed, but again, whenever I tried to get up or turn on the light, it would vanish. One night, I woke up to just this thing standing there like usual, but this time I could see a creepy woman's face on it. It was smiling at me. I said, "Fuck off," and it vanished. For a while, I didn't see the thing, but I started coming up with scratches all over my body. I had no idea where they had come from, and I would find them on my arms, my chest, my hips, and thighs. One night I woke up and ran to the bathroom mirror because I thought maybe I would find the thing that bit me, to find scratches all over my shoulder and back like someone just clawed me. I checked my bed for anything that could possibly scratch me, and even visited a doctor who asked me if I was self-harming. I wasn't, and I couldn't figure out where these scratches were coming from. The last incident occurred one night when I was half asleep and rolled over to my side. I felt air on my face, and I originally ignored it until I felt a big gust of air directly into my face. I opened my eyes to come face to face with this rotten, bloated, dead-looking woman. She looked wet like someone killed her and then left her in some water to rot. Her body was coming out from underneath the bed while her head was propped up near my face. I actually screamed and I was too scared to get off the bed. I covered my face with the blankets and then started saying prayers and waited until the morning. After that, it never came back and the scratches healed. It scares me to think about, but I do wonder if it lived under my bed for a period of time and was scratching me from underneath. As to where it came from, again, I don't believe in spells, but whatever it was wanted to pose as a female, and I think it a part of my loser ex-housemate, like a malevolent manifestation of spite. The Spirit Tree. When I lived in Florida, around Jupiter, we had Juneau and a Marcinski beach. My whole life I grew up on this beach, and at night some strange things have happened. From UFOs to apparitions, I've always felt a strong natural spirit here. Later in my teenage years, I was often kicked out of my house, anywhere from weeks to months at a time. I lived on these beaches. Most specifically, I kind of always stayed at Shower 39. Shower 39 was the heaviest I felt this natural spirit. I even saw what I dubbed a beach demon there in the trees. 2 of my other friends saw this and still talk about it. Still, for whatever reason, I felt safe here and comfortable, sleeping below the shifting canopies of the sea grape forest. The way the beaches are laid out is there's a sidewalk, then a long stretch of sea grape forest that stretches the entire beach, then the beach. I've spent many isolated nights on my own on these beaches from 16 to 23. There was this tree that me and my friends dubbed the Spirit Tree. It was an uprooted tree that appeared on the beach in certain months. It was up on the beach mostly in the winter months. It'd wash up when the storms came, and it'd be on the beach for a couple of weeks or a few days. It'd be right where the surf met the beach, as most trees that washed up would be in the surf. Now, what made this tree unique is that it was the same tree every time for as long as I can remember. It would also wash up in the same general area, from Shower 32 to Shower 44, most prominent around Shower 39. My personal favorite shower, where I've experienced the strangest things in my life. I'd see it a lot while I was on serious psychedelic journeys. But other people who were sober and with me, people who were sober and who were sober with me would see this tree, and they always freaked out. Because on the rational side, this should not be possible, but here it was. With most of the deepest carvings remained in it, the same exact tree months later. You would drive yourself insane trying to figure it out. And around the tree, everybody would feel this vibe of deep respect, mystery, peace, love, and wonder. For some, it would elicit an overwhelming feeling of anxiety. I remember I was with this one girl when I found it one day. She didn't fully believe me, but I insisted that we leave. I was climbing all over it, hugging it, and looking at all of our old carvings. I was tripping. Eventually, reluctantly, I agreed to keep walking the beach. She later told me that at one point she felt so nervous around it that she couldn't catch her breath. I loved the Spirit Tree. Most of us hippies did as well. It was something that made no sense. The Spirit Tree showed itself to me a lot when I was in troubling times, and it always made me feel comfortable. However, Every strange or quote-unquote paranormal experience I had on that beach, from UFO, ghosts, strange altered states that made no sense, and even one beach demon-like creature happened after I saw the spirit tree. Still, it never scared me. The spirit tree, anyways. Anyways, this is one of the many of my strange paranormal experiences. This, however, is the most nostalgic, and thoughts of the spirit tree make me happy as I remember this almost bond that I had with it. Many nights alone after getting kicked out of my house, I'd go to the beach feeling a deep, lonely depression just to find the spirit tree, and it would always lift my spirits. Believe this or not, but I promise you that this happens on the beaches of Markinski and Juneau. And if you find a tree washed up on the beach one late night around shower 39 with carvings all over it, looking older than time itself, show your respect to this wonderful, amazing spirit tree if it strikes your fancy. Don't if you don't want to. To many it'll just be a washed up tree, but to those of us who know it like the back of our hands. And this tree is so much more. The devil lived in my shed. I've had a handful of strange happenings, but this one takes the cake as the most sinister one that I've ever experienced. I don't even like thinking about it because it still chills up my spine. So here goes nothing. When I was a kid, my mom moved from house to house a lot. We weren't really well off, so to say the least, which resulted in us staying with a lot of other people. This house, though, had some strange things that happened right off the bat. We'd hear footsteps all over the house, all hours of the day, but more often late at night. Doors would slam occasionally, and drawers would open, things like that. Your typical haunted house type of deal. Being somewhat used to this at this point, because I grew up on a haunted Coast Guard base, didn't really bother me that much. It spooked me when the doors would slam, but I wasn't really terrified. My mother was very Christian, and she would tell me not to pay any attention to these things because they just wanted to scare you. So I braved it pretty well. It always seemed like my mom and I attracted these type of things. Well, these weird things started increasing over time. I started seeing a very inhuman entity in my room. This thing with a deformed trunk got half gray or blue in color, huge eyes and a lanky demeanor, and would be seen by my bedside looking down at me. Its face was skinny and deformed, and I would see the glowing blue bubbles floating around the room when it appeared. I couldn't not be afraid at this point, and I would now be sleeping in my mother's room. But this thing would keep appearing, and I would shake my mom till she woke up. When she woke, the entity would be gone. After a while, I learned to ignore this thing when I felt the chills hit me. And when I was trying to sleep, I would just throw the blankets and the pillows underneath my head. Eventually, I would start praying, and this seemed to work after a while. Well, one day, me and my friend are in the backyard playing Marco Polo without the pool. It was kind of like hide and go seek, except you can whisper polo and you still have to stand still. Most of the time, my friend would always whisper polo. We also had this shed in the corner of the yard. It was always locked up, so never knew what was in it. I walked around, deprived of my vision, calling out Marco. No response. I call out again, and no response. I call out again, rather annoyed, because he always tried to cheat like that. I call out one last time, and I hear a faint whisper. Finally, someone decided to play fate. At least I thought. I turn around. Marco! I hear the whisper polo. I start walking toward the sound. Marco! No response. Marco! Still no response. Arms reached out, walking blindly, taking slow steps. I feel a wall. I get ready to call out again. I get cut off with a low, evil growl. Not human, not animal. Then it happened. Flashes of fire and death so gruesome I can't chalk it up to an overactive imagination. I would have to be seriously disturbed to see what I did. In the fire and death, I saw flashes of tormented faces melting and bubbling in the fire. I tried to open my eyes, but the images were still burning through. I saw hundreds of faces tormented and screaming, bodies twisted, charred, and disfigured. Screams pierced my eardrums, so blood-curdling that they drowned out my own screams. There were growling and howls all around. It was so terrible when I came through that my friend was shaking me very rapidly. I was in a ball, holding my legs, screaming and crying. I ran into the house and told my mom. She instantly got us out of that house that day and moved to a different friend's house. We went to church all the time after the house. We went to church all the time after that, and she had a priest pray over me for weeks after that. I never experienced anything like that again, thank God. I'm glad I never went into detail about the faces, or my mom would have definitely sent me to therapy. It was haunting my dreams, and this place a few years after it happens. But even the dreams weren't as bad as what really happened. The faces I saw melted and boiled till the skin peeled away to expose the meat and bone behind it. Then that would melt into a different face and the same thing would happen. These faces all screamed while melting in intense anguish. This was actually terrifying for me to write, guys. I honestly hope that nobody can relate to this experience. Believe in hell or don't, I know what I saw that day and I can never forget. Car crash and parallel universe. In the summer of 2017, around 2 hours after my grandfather passed away, me and my sister were in a horrific car accident. It was a bit past midnight. We were on our way to Grandpa's house. I was behind the wheel and driving moderately fast. I was supposed to make a U-turn, but the brakes failed and we hit the guardrail. The front of the car was demolished. Both of us were badly injured. I believe I lost consciousness for a few seconds. When I woke up again, I looked at her and saw blood all over her face and realized that she too had lost her consciousness. She was slowly coming on when I squeezed myself out the window and went to the other side to get her out of the car. The door was stuck just like mine, so I couldn't get her out. People started to gather around and call 911. The firefighters came and removed the door and finally brought her out of the car. When the ambulance was taking us to the hospital, I was having the longest deja vu of my entire life. I knew which hospital that we were going to, even though nobody told me, and I knew how the interior of the hospital looked like, somewhere I've never even been before. I even knew the name of the doctor who was supposed to stitch me up, someone who I've also never met before. It's weird because as soon as me and my sister were alone and could talk to each other, she told me about how she felt like she's been there before and was feeling deja vu the whole time. It might seem normal for people who suffered head trauma to experience these kind of things and read too much into something that isn't actually there, but it's a lot more weirder than it seemed like at first glance. I believe that both of us died on that timeline, but for some reason, our consciousness switched on into a parallel version of ourselves in another universe. And the constant feeling of deja vu was because of our consciousnesses settling into the bodies of our alternate selves with the original consciousnesses still present, which caused the feeling of experiencing everything twice. Now here's something truly bizarre. There was this song called Zalem by Monson Chavoshi, which our mom loved and listened to almost every single day. Even when my mom didn't play it, my older brother would. It was kind of a signature song in our home back in 2005 all the way to 2008. So a few months after the crash, I was having a conversation with one of my co-eds about music. She was without a doubt the #1 fan of Mohsen Chavoshi, to the point that we used to call her a Chavoshist. She was talking about her favorite Chavoshi song, and I just remembered all those years of listening to Zalem, and I said, "Yeah, he's a good singer. My mom loved Zalem. She used to play it on repeat until someone became sick of hearing it." She frowned and asked me about the song that I had just mentioned. She said that he doesn't have a song named Zalem. I thought maybe I got the name wrong, so I sang the chorus. She shook her head and said it's not a Chavoshi song. She named Farouk as the singer. I swore that the song I used to listen to was Chavoshi's. His voice is unmistakable. There's no way I'd be wrong about that. So she asked me to send her the song. Obviously, I didn't have her old computer in which the song was stored on, and I couldn't find her old Chavoshi mix CD, so I Googled it. No matter how much I looked, I couldn't find it online. I even searched by the lyrics and only found the song Zalem by Farouk. I thought maybe it's the same song and I was wrong all along. So I downloaded it and listened to it, but the song by Farouk can't be more different from what I remember. Sure, it has the same lyrics, but the melody and the genre of it's completely different. So I asked my mom about it, and guess what? She never heard of it. Neither did my brother. And my brother gave us the song in the first place. They have no recollection of that song, whether it's Chavoshi's or Farouk's. On the other hand, my sister remembers it. I sang her the chorus and she said it was a Chavoshi song. Somehow she and I have memories about a song which didn't even exist in this world. I don't know why or even how it's possible, but I sincerely believe that we moved through dimensions when we were both unconscious after that crash. I've heard stories that happened to other people which are similar to our experience. I don't want to get too much onto this one, but I think it has something to do with my grandpa's death. Maybe we were supposed to die that night, but his death caused an event which led us to moving on to another universe where we didn't die. Little kids running around in the ICU when death comes. Some of you that work in hospitals, or have loved ones that work in hospitals, or have been close to a loved one as they took their last breaths and transitioned to the great unknown, may have heard what I'm about to describe. There's a particular phenomenon that occurs to people in those last moments, and I'm talking about the appearance of kids running around their deathbed or just outside their room. This is to be differentiated to the phenomenon of close ones that have passed away visiting in days prior to their deaths. This is different. This occurs hours, if not minutes, before their deaths. I experience this with greater frequency whenever I work in the ICU unit, where people are very sick. What most patients describe as cheerful kids, running about around their beds in a playful manner, snickering or just playing. Most patients usually respond calling the nurse and asking, "Who are these kids running around and where are their parents?" and scaring the living bejesus out of them. if they're new nurses. If they are experienced nurses, they know the time of the end is soon to come, and they communicate promptly with us doctors and let us know to be ready. Literature often chalks this phenomenon up to a lack of oxygen in the brain or neurochemical changes in the process of death and dying. But the pattern is very recognizable, and the experience is very similar across all cultural backgrounds and ages. Almost all hospitals have a story about these kids. And if you are entering the field of medicine, nursing, or any other health-allied profession, you will certainly hear these stories. So if you're doing rounds in the ICU at night and hear some snickering or tiny feet running in the hallways, prepare, because the call of a code green or a code red is about to sound off in the PA system. Sleep apnea and hypoxia, small window into the afterlife. As an internal medicine physician, I deal with all types of diseases and human conditions. Now, I've done this job, and medicine's been my calling for more than 15 years, so I can easily say that at this point in my career, I'm able to identify patterns in patients' experiences and see some commonalities. Well, these commonalities also expand to the realm of the arcane and the realm of the unknown. There's a common experience that is, shall we say, odd in its reproducibility and parallel nature from patient to patient. I'm talking about patients coming in for restless nights, poor sleep quality, and headaches that undoubtedly get a later diagnosis of sleep apnea from me after the pertinent sleep study. Now, here's the interesting part. Almost all of these patients have an issue with hyperreal dreams that can range from an astral projection type of experience, hovering above their bodies, and in some instances, encounters with family members that have sort of passed on, or encounters with beings as well. The diagnosis here is straightforward. Obstructive sleep apnea is the most common sleep-related breathing disorder. It causes you to repeatedly stop and start breathing while you sleep. There are several types of sleep apnea, but the most common is obstructive sleep apnea. This type of apnea occurs when your throat muscles intermittently relax and block your airway during sleep. A noticeable sign of obstructive sleep apnea is snoring. When you stop breathing, your oxygen level drops drastically for short periods of time, and this jerks your physiology into a panic and wakes you up to rescue you from your impending oxygenless doom. But when your oxygen is critically low, you can say that you're dangerously close to the threshold between life and death. In essence, a near-death experience on your favorite pillow. So the next time you see your loved one in a dream, you astral project or have a wildly realistic dream, you could have just had a brush with the Grim Reaper without even knowing it. A little bit about black magic practices. For context, my husband has a very short temper, but I've been working on communications with him. We get along pretty well, with banter here and there. My husband's a 45-year-old male. Let's call him S. He has very weird dreams that seem to me more like premonitions at times, but he can't even dream us some lottery numbers. Anyway, about a week ago on a Monday, he told me not to accept any food offerings from anyone and not to leave my bag unattended. I carry a haversack usually as I go to the gym during my lunch hours. I told him it's impossible to carry my bag everywhere I go, but I didn't receive any food offerings from that. Would be devastated if someone had brought me a Krispy Kreme donut only for me to refuse it. I asked him why he was giving me this specific instruction, and he told me in his dream, an unknown entity told him that someone is out to get us through me. As it's a normal occurrence, him in his dream had took note of the request. A few days went by, uneventful of course, but on a Friday, as I didn't go to the gym on that day, I decided to change my bag from a haversack to a sling bag. I left my haversack on the floor of my room and I'd forgotten to set it aside. My husband picked up my bag, and he's a bit OCD and can't stand a mess, and lo and behold, a condom fell out. Now, this would have easily caused a misunderstanding, except he had a dream forewarning him about something happening through me, and that condom stands in between me and getting my ass divorced and the paranormal. How did the stupid thing even get in my bag? Also, we didn't have any condoms in the household at that very moment. I wasn't home when that happened, and naturally he was a bit upset, so he stayed out of the house and told me to look at the pack when I came home. I did. I was like, what is this? I told him to haul his ass up home soon. And no, I wasn't cheating. Cheating is a very tiring game. I tossed the condom aside and totally forgot about it. S, on the other hand, was determined to check the condom. It was sealed, but the contents didn't feel like a condom has been in it. He tore the pack open and the contents were hairs, sand, some red beads, and pieces of what looked like tiny fragments of a rock. I'm really not sure what spell is binded in that condom, but I think whoever that person is, it's meant to break my marriage apart. I'm adamant that it came from one of his friends, but why? Because regardless of how qualified S is, he hasn't been successful with job finding for the last 3 months. Luckily, we're a 2-income household, and I was able to carry my family for the last few months. Stressful, but doable. He has this friend who constantly is checking up on his well-being, and I have a feeling that it's just to ensure that S is down on his luck and all that. That person often contacted S, and even when S replied sarcastically, that friend kept messaging him over and over on the pretext of getting him to an interview or a job. I've decided to read some prayers over and over by myself. S has just started a new job this week. Nothing significant happened to me, and whatever was trying didn't succeed.